Hello and welcome to RadioTimes.com's review of The Meg 2, The Trench, which has just arrived in UK cinemas 5 years after Jason Statham first did battle with a prehistoric shark in 2018's The Meg. I'm Patrick Cremona, senior film writer at RadioTimes.com, and I'll be discussing whether or not you should kind of rush out to go and see this film at the cinemas. So the film once again sees Statham play the role of Jonas Taylor, who's a deep-sea diver, and as you'd expect from a film like this, from a sequel to a kind of monster movie, the dangers that he's facing have exponentially increased. So in the first film, he was largely doing battle with one prehistoric shark, and now of course there are more of them. He even says the phrase "more Megs" in a kind of deadpan style at one point in the film. But not only that, there are also all these other kind of prehistoric creatures as well. We've got some kind of giant lizards, we've got a massive tentacled squid-like creature that does pretty major damage at one point. And the film wastes no time in setting this up. These creatures are all introduced right at the very beginning of the film, in a kind of prehistoric set scene as the film opens. And that's useful insofar as, on the one hand, it introduces these creatures that Jonas is going to be facing, but it also kind of sets a scene in terms of, showing us some pretty shoddy CGI work, which is unfortunately in evidence throughout much of the film. So it's double the danger, but is it double the fun? Well, sadly not quite. It's a shame because there were some quite high hopes that this film might be a little bit weird, there might be some kind of strangeness to it, largely because of the slightly unlikely choice of director, Ben Wheatley. Now, Wheatley's more well known for his kind of fairly low budget kind of British independent horror films, things like Kill List and Sightseers and A Field in England. So there were some hopes that he might be able to bring some of that kind of grisly sensibility, that kind of dark sense of humour to Meg 2 and create something which was a little bit of a different flavour to your kind of average franchise monster movie. And there were a few scenes or some suggestions of that. Some of the kills kind of have that kind of slightly grisly thing, but largely, Wheatley's stamp is fairly absent from the film. You're not going to be leaving this thinking this is of a piece with his filmography. And largely that's just because there is so many fairly kind of obvious flaws, one of which is just the slapdash nature of the plotting. A film like this does not need a complex plot. Really what we want is Jason Statham fighting a shark. You've got it there. And okay, it needs to have a little bit more in this one than in the first one, but it's just so much going on in terms of kind of different characters, from fairly ill-defined mercenary villains to kind of returning characters from the last one, some of whom it's quite good to see. Paige Kennedy is quite good comic value as DJ, but largely this just gets in the way. There's so many characters, so many plot strands, so many monsters, that the film never really builds up any sense of momentum, and is therefore lacking in tension. And that's the one thing you need in a film like this, is you need a good degree of tension. So all that's not to say that there aren't some surface level pleasures. There are some scenes fairly on in the film set underwater where there's a nice kind of claustrophobic edge to it. And, as the ridiculousness kind of ratchets up, you do get the kind of entertainment value of Jason Statham trying to harpoon various Megs. But really it is those surface level pleasures that are kind of scattered throughout the film that are the only reason to go and see this. It's not, anyone hoping for a kind of film, a Ben Wheatley film in the Meg universe is probably going to leave quite disappointed.